Hey, what's up, guys? Ryan from Elevate Cyber here. Have you heard about the recent Hugging Face breach? It was pretty insane. And what made this so crazy is it was the first attack of its kind that we have ever seen where an agentic system went and fully autonomously hacked another company. So first of all, if you're not familiar with Hugging Face, let me just share my screen with you right now. So I have up on the screen the Hugging Face website here. And this is just a site where you can go and download local AI models. So they have pretty much every local model you can think of under the sun, and a lot of other stuff too, data sets, all kinds of stuff. But primarily a lot of people come here to download models, things like Quen, things like GLM if you have like some crazy server that can run it. And yeah, you can just download in any of these, deploy them locally, and everything like that. Well, one of the things about these models is they contain code inside them, and basically this autonomous agent was able to come in and find multiple 0 days, chain them together, and actually execute the code in the models, like within the data pipeline of Hugging Face, and breach their company. And then it moved laterally. It like started doing like red teamer adversarial stuff where it was stealing credentials and reusing those credentials and moving laterally, escalating privileges, doing all the crazy stuff that APTs and red teamers do. And now the craziest thing about this is you might be wondering like, well, okay, who kicked off the automation, right? Who actually, triggered this attack? Well, it turns out that it was OpenAI. They came back and said, you know what? I think maybe, they saw all the stuff about the breach. They're like, I think that was maybe us, right? So what ended up happening is, if you might be familiar, when these new models come out, and the cybersecurity specialist ones as well, they benchmark them in a number of areas. Well, I believe this particular model by OpenAI, they were doing a benchmark on the performance of one of their cybersecurity specialized models. And in that benchmark, keep in mind, they're benchmarking it on how good is it at cybersecurity. And, what do we do in cybersecurity, right? We, on the offensive side, we try to break out of stuff. If we put, if we set the rules, we try to break out of the rules. Now, hopefully you're not going out of scope and things like that. Well, turns out this AI, while it was really good at, thinking outside the box like an attacker, it wasn't so good at obeying the scope. So when they're running one of these benchmarks, it actually broke out of the sandbox that they had put in place for the benchmarking, and it went out and it said, okay, well, it basically wanted to cheat because, they try to accomplish the goals by any means necessary. That's what a lot of these models do. And a lot of the times it goes out of scope. They try to, these companies try to be like, oh yeah, that shows you how good it is. It's determined. It will work endlessly until it figures out a solution. And if there's no solution, it's going to go and create one. It's going to, bend the rules. It's going to cheat if it has to. It's going to do what is required. And at the same time, like, if you were on the job and you took that approach and you went completely out of scope to do what was required, like, do you think that your boss would be like, oh yeah, you did what was required and blah, 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 you went above and beyond, even though you hacked our company in order to achieve your job, good job, you're going to get a raise. No, I don't think so, right? But anyways, I digress. That is kind of the stance that of course, the people selling you AI is going to take. They're going to say, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, here in this scenario, there was no sugarcoating it. They really screwed up here. And anyways, when this was doing the benchmarking, right, it broke out of that sandbox and it wanted to see like, okay, well, where are the rules of this? Like where, and that's how it ended up doing all this research, and it found Hugging Face and it's like, oh, okay, like these other models and, my model is here on Hugging Face, let me try and breach this company because they probably have some really valuable information that's going to help me win this benchmark and be number one, right? I think essentially that was what happened. And so in doing so, it started enumerating the website, and it started, it found like some 0 days in the data pipeline for these models. And it actually, found like a remote code execution vulnerability, chained a couple 0 days together, and got initial access. So apparently the folks over at Hugging Face, all of a sudden, they just saw a bunch of alerts flooding in, and the website was getting hammered by this autonomous agent. I think it spun up a bunch of resources and was like bombarding it with traffic and stuff like that during the window of this attack. And they were like freaking out, like, oh, what's going on here? And they were seeing that it was like doing all this stuff, moving laterally, being noisy as hell, by the way, which that's something to keep in mind. Like if you know, are going to use this for nefarious purposes or you're thinking about it, you might want to think twice, because a lot of times these AIs are very noisy, and yeah, that was the case with this one. So even though it was able to find 0 days and do all this stuff, obviously it wasn't trained, or for whatever reason decided it didn't need to abide by any kind of OPSEC rules or anything like that. As a funny aside here, I live in Thailand, and one of the things that came up in the news recently is there was like some like Thai fugitive guy that had like 5 warrants for his arrest out, and he essentially used AI to try to figure out how to hack into the Thai Royal Police and get into the database and wipe his 5 warrants from the database. And he did succeed in doing that, by the way. He actually succeeded in doing that, but he didn't really succeed in doing that because he got caught. So he got caught, and now he's probably in more trouble than he was before. So yeah, just keep that in mind with all this stuff. But this is not even what I'm saying here with the AI autonomous stuff, breaching a major company, moving laterally, doing all this stuff. That's crazy, but that's not even arguably the craziest part of the story. One of the more crazy parts of the story, not only was it, OpenAI that essentially did this, is the fact that after this breach occurred, right, what always happens, if you know the cybersecurity space, you're going to need to call in incident response to see, okay, we know we were breached. Now let's figure out what was taken, what was compromised, what did the attacker do, what are the artifacts that we can, forensically analyze here, and, is there any malware, what are the, what happened essentially. And when they brought in the forensics team to do that, funny enough, and this is the irony in all of it, they were blocked by the guardrails of the AI that they're trying to use to analyze the stuff forensically. And why were they blocked? Well, because of the cybersecurity guardrails. And why were the cybersecurity guardrails triggered? Well, they were triggered because when they were analyzing the log files, those log files contained malicious attacker commands and stuff like that. So the AI saw it and said, oh no, these are malicious commands here. I cannot help you. And even though those were the good guys trying to analyze the stuff forensically, it said, nope, this contains attacker commands. I cannot help you with this. And the funny thing about it is, if you now that we know, because originally when this happened, we didn't know who was behind the attack. Now that we know, accidentally, it was, they say accidentally, right? OpenAI. That's the funny part. It's like, it was an OpenAI model that actually attacked this stuff that didn't have any guardrails, because OpenAI, of course, has access to running their models with no guardrails. The complete, bazooka nuke, cybersecurity model unguarded and everything. They can run that. But when the defenders try to, use the AI in order to do the incident response work, they're kind of beholden to using these guardrailed, walled garden commercial models that we all have to use as well. And now they can't even do their job because of that. So what was the solution to this? Well, the forensics team had to end up spinning up a local AI, one that you can download from Hugging Face. This one called ZAI, or from ZAI, I should say, called GLM 5.2, which, if you guys have been following closely the AI space and the benchmarks and stuff, this one actually performs as well as benchmarking as well, if not better than a lot of your frontier models in the US, Anthropic models and the OpenAI models. But the funny thing is, this is not a U.S. model. This one is a Chinese model. This one's from China. China's really eating our lunch in terms of what they're doing on the AI space, and doing it with for a lot cheaper as well. Like, I believe for most of these Chinese models, you can run them if you use the cloud option and use it from the vendor directly, not even doing it locally. It's like significantly cheaper than using the API keys and stuff for the American model. So that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, that was a funny thing. We ended up them having to use like another model outside that ecosystem. They end up using a local model, and it was able to take care of it. I think there's a lot to learn from this, and I think that the defenders will be given access by these big companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, given access to some cybersecurity special models they can use in these scenarios. But yeah, still like that walled off, closed off thing that a lot of these big companies in the US are trying to move towards. I don't think that's really good for cybersecurity as a whole and for, everyone as a whole. And now, but now that's being sidestepped anyways, because you can just run these local models and you can download the models that don't have any guardrails at all. And yeah, sure, right now, maybe, probably you can't run GLM 5.2 because you need like a, server quality, like data center quality server to run that on. But there are still really good models out there that you can do locally with things like some of the different Quen models and stuff. You can quantize it as well and still get pretty good performance. And I think over time, the models are going to get even better and better, more performant. You're going to get access to better hardware over time. And eventually, it's going to be a fairly negligible difference. So that's going to be really interesting when we get to that point and see, where Claude and Anthropic are at that point, where Anthropic and OpenAI are at that point, because, they got some real competition now from these Chinese companies and these open-weighted models. So yeah, we'll see where all that goes. But this was just a really interesting case of all that happening, a bit of a circus over there with that. And yeah, it broke out of everything, and it just took it upon itself. So something to keep in mind, if you are running your own models, especially if you're running them with like /goal and stuff like that, and you're giving them like a goal and you're AFKing and just letting it do its thing, especially if you're running something that's like a always on continuous thing, like a Hermes or Claude, what was the other one? Claude bot. Then you're definitely going to want to really pay attention to your scoping and stuff like that, and make sure that it doesn't go out of scope, that you could clearly define the scope of the tooling and, where it should not go beyond, and make sure it's very clear about that. So that way you don't get yourself into any trouble as well. What do you think of all this craziness? Let me know down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.